Perhaps top among China's challenges in this situation is financing new and growing industries. Most would agree that one key to this is improving the country's stock markets, here in Shanghai and in Shenzhen. Well, for the last 6 months, a group of new market regulators has been working on just that. After the break, we'll see how they're doing on this week's Hot Chat. Welcome back to Money Talks. A truly astounding number of people trade on China's stock markets. There are something like 50 million Chinese who own shares on the mainland's 2 stock exchanges in Shanghai and Shenzhen. That's even more amazing when you stop to think that in the last 5 years, the value of stocks on those exchanges have fallen by more than half. If that sounds strange to you, you're not alone. The Chinese government thinks something is not right either, and last year named a new set of regulators empowered to overhaul the system. Their first set of reforms were announced 10 days ago. Cuts in commissions and new rules making it easier to delist non-performing companies. How's all that going? Are China's stock markets set for a turnaround? Let's find out in this week's Hot Chat.
Both China's markets opened 2% up following the May 1st holidays. You could almost hear the sighs of relief. Both indexes are now close to breaking 2-month records and have rallied more than 10% since the beginning of the year. Why all the optimism? Most cite new policies announced over the holidays. Market regulators cut transaction fees on equity trades by 25% and announced tougher measures to enforce the delisting of unqualified firms. Everyone seems to be presuming this is the beginning of a stock market cleanup in China.
The revision of delisting criteria is widely agreed to be the most significant move. It is expected this will help clean up the market and help investors focus on the quality of the stocks and the long-term potential of the companies.
No one would disagree that China's stock markets are pretty special, not least because they underperformed against their global peers for the last 2 years, a period in which China's GDP was rising at a rate of 8% a year. It's also because China has some special stocks in the market, the so-called ST stocks. ST stands for special treatment, and the original idea behind this classification is that it would act as a warning to investors. All stocks labeled ST have seen their business in the red for 2 consecutive years and are technically on the brink of delisting. The problem is, they were never delisted. In the past 20 years, only 1.8% of companies were delisted from China's stock markets. That number on the New York Stock Exchange is 6% per year.
它可以拖得很长，比如说它这个利润指标不达标的话，过往呢实际上它会存在一个通过这个重组制造很多这个概念，然后长期就 ST 对不对？然后这个过一段时间它马上又变成一个就是没有达到一个退市的条件，然后呢它通过这个有一个时间段又保留了这样一个上市的一个地位，但这个动作它可以不断延续的，没有一个时间性的一个强制性的要求。
There is another use for the ST companies, however. If a company wants a stock market listing, normally it would apply for an initial public offering, but it's not easy to get approval for an IPO in China. Company records need to be examined and verified by regulators. Companies with questionable business records will be eliminated, but using ST stocks for a backdoor listing made many of these problems disappear. The new company could buy stock in the ST company and announce a merger and a restructuring. The new company wound up in the market simply and easily, and the ST company kept its listing alive for a while longer. The newly merged company looks good to investors, and so the price goes up. And so everybody is happy, unless the stock price collapses later, which they often did.
中国是散户主导的市场，如果你看成交量的话，差不多85%到90%的成交量是由散户完成的。那在西方的话，这比例是正好调过来的。所以说，那散户它的一个特征就是说容易，我们叫做学术上叫做羊群效应，容易跟风。那有一个概念热炒，大家都会去追。
The new draft regulations on delisting aim to solve this long-term headache for China's stock markets. First of all, the stocks of companies with annual revenues of less than 10 million yuan over a period of 2 years will be classified ST. Then, those stocks will be delisted at the end of the 3rd year if company revenues do not improve. A company's stock will also be marked ST if its net assets are less than zero, and will be delisted after 2 years if they continue to show no asset growth. And third, stocks with a trading volume of fewer than 5 million shares over a period of 120 trading days, or which have a share value lower than par value, will also be delisted. The regulators are trying to tighten up the ST classification and to prevent it being used for backdoor listings. Companies who want to merge with ST companies will also now be investigated by market regulators.
另外一个就是说，比如说创业板和主板，那么他们后续的通过资产重组，就是进行一个就是可资源的一个价值的重新体现的话，那么在这方面的要求标准也是比之前严厉了。这个已经标准是等同于这种重新 IPO。
Based on the new criteria, there are some 40 stocks which will face delisting. China now has some 150 ST stocks. So when the regulation comes into effect, it will directly and immediately force 26% of ST companies out of the market. Just the threat of that is having an effect.
As soon as the draft was announced, ST stock prices dropped nearly 3%, while the benchmark indexes went up more than 2%. The hope is that the trend will continue and that investors' focus will shift from speculative underperforming companies to more solid ventures. Experts say most blue-chip stocks in China's markets now have investment potential similar to companies listed in Western markets, price-earning ratios of around 10. Investment advisors predict a steady flow of funds from the ST companies into more productive investments, blue chips, and companies that pay regular dividends to investors, which has not been common in China in the past.
大蓝筹、小蓝筹，那么整体上来说，应该是蓝筹股的整体上，应该价值都会得到提升。那么未来的业绩呢，将更加是成为这个投资者首要关注的一个标准。这样的话，就是这个蓝筹的意义定义就比较宽泛了，不是说局限于这个普通的一些就是盘子大的股票。
That's certainly good news for companies with good performance, but which may not have been treated kindly by local markets in the past. Toflon, for example, is a medical equipment maker in Shanghai. It listed in Shenzhen last year, offering a dividend of 8 yuan for every 10 shares. Its annual revenue growth has been 20% in the past year and a half, and the company expanded from 1 to 4 factories. But still, its share price has been hovering around 30 yuan, 10 yuan lower than its IPO price. The company owner believes the new policies will push companies to focus more on their performance instead of their stock price. This will increase pressure, but in a good way.
谁都不希望走到 ST 嘛，这个是每个上市公司，但是你如果是不认真去经营了，那可能 ST 就等着你。中国的制药工业非常庞大，所以我们的这个成长也会是可以，就是说将来在国际上面也会有一定的竞争力的。所以我们一个是做国际市场上的这个布局。另外一个呢，我们的产品呢原来是比较单一的，是做冻干注射，在水针，在抗菌素的那个粉末分装针剂，也在不断的现在在做研发。
Zheng, who's studying for his MBA at the China-Europe International Business School, says he wants to expand overseas by increasing the share of products he exports from his current 10% to 50% in the next 3 years, while still keeping his promise of maintaining revenue at more than 1 yuan per share. And he hopes the stock market's new delisting policy will lead more investors to make more rational decisions and turn to solid companies like his.
The new rules are said to encourage investors to judge the real value of a stock trade. Despite the potential positive effects, however, some experts are concerned that the new regulations contain few details on enforcement and implementation.
Ye Yusheng has been helping companies list for IPOs in Hong Kong, the US, and Chinese mainland for 7 years. He points out the new policies contain no specific rules about punishment of fraud. He tells the story of a Shenzhen-listed A-share company found to have committed fraud. Investors lost 4.8 billion yuan, but the company was fined only 4 million yuan. In contrast, he says, is the story of a company called Hontex that listed in Hong Kong with a fake financial report. Hong Kong regulators stopped its trading immediately.
香港证监会就通过香港的高院就冻结了他募集资金大概10亿港币。那这10亿港币就是说他可以把这个钱就再还给这个投资者，不会导致这个投资者就血本无归嘛。
Not only would tighter market regulation benefit investors in China's solid companies, it would also improve the market's ability to be a barometer for the country's economy.
中国的股市的回报都是负的，而去年是全世界排在最后一名的。那这跟中国这个 GDP 在这个增长正好相反的。
And that poor performance limits the ability of the markets to generate investment for China's growing economy. Last year, only 10 million people opened new accounts in the A-share market. That's the lowest level in the past 5 years.
过去的几个月，A 股的交易量明显的下降了，要比去年来讲 下降了40%左右。
Even with the international financial crisis, markets in other countries are still doing better than China's. U.S. stock markets are now very close to their peaks before the 2008 financial crisis. How much growth would China's market need now if it were to rise back to its peak level? Nearly 250%. But still, experts are convinced that with proper regulation, that's perfectly possible, and that in fact, now could be a good time to invest.
现在的一个现象，这是一个短期的，在一个特殊的情况底下的一个市场的一个扭曲。但是，一旦这个市场理顺了，这个所有的这个法律法规制度都健全了，大家的这个，特别是投资者更加理性了，更加专业了，那这些问题就是会迎刃而解。
And perhaps Professor Rui is right. According to the latest statistics from regulators, more and more Chinese companies are actually taking the drastic step of paying dividends to their shareholders. In 2011, over 1,600 companies issued dividends. That's 67% of all listed companies, and a 61% increase over 2010. Well, that's Money Talks for the week, and if you've got anything you'd like to say about the show or something you'd like us to look into, drop us a line. You can email us at moneytalks@icshanghai.com. It would be very good to hear from you. Good night and good weekend from Money Talks.